Hello, and welcome to Reanimated. This is the 153rd episode of this podcast about zombies. My name is Stuart. I'm on the West Coast, and joining me, as always, is the inviolable H.A. Conrad.
Hello.
What's happening?
Mainly food things. I had some good cupcakes. I had some good pizza. It's all good.
That is nice. I also had some good food this weekend. It was celebrating a little harvest, so we had some Federweiser and Zwiebelkuchen, as you will, as one does.
Nice.
Hey, so we are here today to talk about, the fall. And Fear the Walking Dead episode 12 from season 3, which was My Brother's Keeper. And we've got a couple things in the news to go over also. So let's stick around while we hammer through the news, and then we'll get to Fear the Walking Dead shortly. First up, news-wise, is a story out of West Virginia. This little, I assume all towns in West Virginia are mining towns at some point in their lives. But Martinsburg, a town of 17,000. This is actually kind of a weird little article where all the quotes are written in italics. But they're like, it's well known that there's nothing to do for kids in Martinsburg, but not anymore.
Yep.
Because they're building an interactive zombie experience.
Yes, but I like that they're building it in an abandoned car dealership area or something. It's like
nothing says urban blight like building another business inside a different business.
Yeah. So anyway, it's interactive. Their number one concern is safety. But apparently, if you want to go and enjoy an interactive zombie survival experience, you can do it in Martinsburg. I agree. I thought that the quotes all in italics was kind of,
different approach. Yeah.
Yep. But anyway, that's what's going on. And because it's fall, you kind of start looking towards the Halloween festivities, which start earlier and earlier now. And so I guess that the idea is that this will be in weekends in October there. And that's, I'm psyched that the things have turned, because it does feel more like that kind of weather right now to get your zombie viewing in, your horror film.
Yeah, we're definitely in the zone.
Yep.
Oh, and speaking of things turning, it's also ADA compliant, so you can get your wheelchair in there and turn it all around.
Ooh,
just a nice little tip.
Well, that was smart of them to do that, so everybody can get involved.
Yeah, so that's Martinsburg. Congratulations, you guys. It's pretty exciting.
No, I think it's pretty awesome. So, yeah. Good job.
Then up next, we've got a book by a Wall Street Journal journalist, reporter, who usually reports on blockchain and cryptocurrency, but then by default became the Wall Street Journal's Walking Dead reporter somehow, and now he's written a book about it.
Well, and part of why I thought this was interesting / funny was because of all of our talk about our Forbes reporters doing their zombie coverage, and I felt like this guy kind of fell into that arena as well, and he did write a book about it. I haven't actually read any of the excerpts yet, just saw the interviews, which I thought were somewhat interesting, so I might check it out and see what it has to offer, and if it seems more interesting than this article, I'll throw it up there. Maybe we can talk about reviewing it at some point. But I kind of feel like it covers ground that we have covered and everybody else has covered a lot. So, basically,
I'm sure.
Why are zombies appealing to everybody? Why is this genre appealing to everybody? It's like, it's got great effects, a great script, and it mirrors certain things that we're dealing with today. So I don't know that he's necessarily giving any new insights, but I just thought it was kind of interesting that this is now such an established piece, not just in in the Wall Street Journal of all things. Would you ever thought that would have been the case
no,
10 years ago? No.
Yeah, clearly that's part of the interest that we have in both Forbes now and this Wall Street Journal. It's like these are unlikely outlets to become an authority on The Walking Dead for sure. But he does make some interesting insights in this interview. The most interesting, I think, is that he basically posits that the show could kill off absolutely everybody on the cast and still continue.
Yep.
Including, Andrew Lincoln's Rick Grimes. That's what this dude, what's his name? Paul Vigna?
Yep.
That's what Paul says. And I kind of agree with that. I think clearly they kill off the Daryls, the Carols, and there would be some bloodshed and riots, but and they would probably lose a lot of their audience. But the show definitely could keep going, which is kind of a interesting realization, and extremely unlikely. No, it's extremely rare in other TV properties, right? Like you can't just do that.
Yeah. And, people definitely would riot over the Daryls and the Carols, but at some point something like that's going to happen, and that's part of how they, I don't want to say keep things fresh, but it is how they keep their audiences sort of on the edge of their seats because they know that stuff might happen.
Season 8, I mean, that's a long, that show is long in the tooth, right? And they're gonna, Andrew Lincoln doesn't want to do this forever. I can't imagine that Norman Reedus does, or Melissa McBride. All these people are gonna get worn out.
If they aren't already, because it feels like they might already be a little worn out. So we'll see what happens. But that's I think that's correct in a correct observation, because I don't know that any other show could deal with that. The problem or the challenge is finding characters that people are adoring as much as these characters. And then where do you go from there? But I mean, we've seen even with Fear the Walking Dead, which is an interesting and has gotten much better in the past few seasons, though I can't wait to talk about today's episode with you, or last week's episode with you. But it definitely has legs, and it can. And you do have to find that. You do have to find that blend of characters that people like but are challenged by, and they're definitely multi-layered to replace those characters, but you can definitely do it. So that's the interesting thing about it. And most other shows are sort of anchored to a specific actor character, and they don't survive longer past that character's death or whatever. And we've seen this happen, in a variety of different shows where the lead didn't, just for whatever reason, didn't want to continue.
What's an example of that?
Well, I mean, I'm more thinking of like sitcoms and things like that, but John Ritter's death caused them, like I don't even remember the name of that show, but they tried to continue on, and they limped along for like half a season and then just couldn't do it.
I didn't even remember that he was on a show when he passed.
Yeah, it was like, it was some, one of those things that I probably wouldn't watch, but that's one. And it depends on like the role, like for, John Spencer, who is in the West Wing, even though that he wasn't, that's a different sort of cast, just because everybody took a big part, but he was a major character that they had a lot of story arcs that were written around him, and they had to basically rewrite everything, and they changed the ending of that show. Basically, they changed the finale due to his death, and they had to reshoot different things.
Well, another serialized story that I don't know anything about how they're going to deal with Carrie Fisher's death in Star Wars, but
that's
another. Definitely going to have to. I mean, maybe they'll handle it in The Last Jedi. Maybe they're not. They're just going to CGI their way out of this. But
I don't think that was their plan. She had finished. She had finished sort of the first round. Like, I think they got enough of her to figure out how to do something with it, but I still don't know. I mean, maybe they have figured it out by now. I don't think she was supposed to be in it forever, and maybe that was helpful, and they had sort of set up things. But there's, but they're, these are all things that you have to figure out. The reason why I'm thinking of West Wing is because they had to actually pivot while they were filming that and change everything, in the midst, and rewrite everything because this actor died. And they had a major story arc around him, I think. Did you watch West Wing at all?
Yeah, was it the chief of staff guy?
Yeah, so basically the whole story arc was that he was supposed to run for president. And they even showed some flashback scenes where he was, or like it was before he died, and then they had to basically completely pivot and figure out something with it, and they did, and it was like this horrible, just heartbreaking thing that happened, because that was an incredibly close cast. And I don't know if they had planned to go on after that season. I think probably they had, and then suddenly it was just wrapped up. So there's things like that, but I feel like Walking Dead, because of the way the story is, it's a story of survival, and you can basically fill that in, not with just anybody. You definitely have to have great actors and a great cast, but you can certainly fill that in with other like great characters. And I think you're right. These actors are getting exhausted. Though,
Well,
did you want to talk very briefly about where Sasha has now
yeah,
turned
I
up?
totally do. And there's actually a segue in here because he talks about how this show and Star Trek are
Right.
similar. And I think he makes an interesting insight here too, because he's like, look, Star Trek is where they have figured out how to work together, against overwhelming odds, which is basically just the survival of the human race in a multi-race universe, I guess. But it's also, Gene Roddenberry created it in the environment of the 1960s and the Cold War and the threat of nuclear destruction, etc. We had the same sorts of cultural overwhelming fear that we do for whatever reason in the 2015s, the 20 teens. And so I like the fact that he's saying, okay, as a culture, we are faced by the same sort of fears, but here's Star Trek, which is a positive take, and Walking Dead is kind of like the adolescent version of that, where there's been an apocalypse, the world has blown up, but people have not really learned how to work together. In fact, it's almost always the opposite. But when they do work together, that's like our nugget of hope that we can take away from this show.
Right, and so and Sonequa Martin Green was the obviously played Sasha, and we were like kind of saying, oh, how is she going to manage to be on both shows? Because she's now cast as a lead in Star Trek Discovery, and the truth is that she was not able to do that.
Wow.
So she kind of went out in like a blaze of glory, and and she was a great character on The Walking Dead.
We've learned our lesson. Whenever a cast member makes an announcement like, "Oh, I'm now the lead on another show,"
Yeah.
or "I'm now in 4 Avatar movies,"
They're going away.
that they're not coming back. Yeah, they're going to get written off the show. I mean, it's funny because both times that's happened, it's been like it's not going to be a conflict. Is how that comes out of PR.
Yep.
But yeah, so I have seen the first episode of the new Star Trek show, and I texted you all googly-eyed about it, and you were like, "Meh, I don't like the I think it's got bad canonical elements." So
I do.
talk to me.
I just think like immediately introducing a character that is proposing mutiny is just completely unlikely in the Star Trek universe. I do love this cast. Did you watch the first episode or the first two?
Just the first one.
Because there's like
Yeah.
a two-parter, right?
Yeah, so I basically I can't watch the new one until I guess next week. I think I don't know how
No,
this works.
you can watch it now. It was confusing, but yes, you can watch it now, I think.
Well,
but anyway,
I'm poised on the precipice of open fighting with the Klingons is where I
okay.
am.
Well, so I am not going to spoil things, but I will do some generalities. I do love this cast. Michelle Yeoh, I think, is always phenomenal, but I think they've kind of set things up for where it's going with her. And then Sonequa Martin Green, I think that there's some really great things, some really great scenes with her doing the exploratory thing with the Klingons. I think it's weird that they've completely changed the Klingon makeup, and they look bizarre to me. And I don't know quite how they decided to do that. They look very strange to me.
I thought maybe it was a branch of the Klingons who were just hairless.
Maybe. I'm not sure if they're just sort of rebooting them to look like this, and maybe you're supposed to imply that they evolve into something a little bit later in the other, which is possible, I guess.
I mean, their look has changed so much since the 50s and 60s.
Oh, totally. But like even from like Next Generation and like
Yeah.
the sort of, and I'm not saying like you always expect there to be somewhat of an update, but this is pretty drastic. They're almost looking like Cro-Magnon, or like I don't even know how to describe it, but they're looking like super like bulky and strange. They are terrifying, and so I think
that space armor that one guy is wearing is
Yeah,
incredible.
no,
Like
it's
honestly,
great.
the visuals are just blowing me away when I'm watching this show.
The visuals are impressive. I am hoping that where they go with this is different from where I suspect they're going with this. I also have to admit, and I mean, this is a season premiere. The whole like Star Trek is typically a little like capsule of an episode. They don't usually do like a cliffhanger. But this is a premiere, so I'll allow them that. But there's some, like, I do love her. I think she's fantastic. I think they're almost trying to get places a little too quickly, and some of the issues, like the mutiny thing, I really have an issue, like a massive issue with.
Okay.
I just don't think that you're going to, and this is a spoiler, sorry, I said I wasn't, but I'm going to. You're not going to have somebody attack a captain as a subordinate. That is just not, like, within this, even if it's, like, to protect them.
Well, maybe it's just Sasha showing up, fresh out of
Maybe.
Alexandria, being like, "No, this is how we do things." Now that I'm on this
and
show.
I know that I'm in the minority. I know everybody else is pretty googly-eyed over this, but it's sort of like this. I feel like this is not my Star Trek. And I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I do think I am excited to see what they do with this, and I hope they move past the dramatics into the interesting, thought-provoking commentary with storytelling. And it seems like they are. I mean, that's kind of where they're going. The whole Klingon Starfleet conflict, and the understanding of different cultures and what different things mean to different people. And they've already introduced the Vulcans into this. In their way of thinking, I think all of that is very interesting. Plus, I think she is a badass. So I really like her, and
great.
I love the look of the uniforms. I love the look of the ship. Everything looks awesome to me.
Yeah,
So.
I'm very excited for the rest of the season. But yeah, we should move on to the rest of the news and then get to our review. But I think we will not be able to not talk about Star Trek the whole. For the whole season, so we'll be back.
Sorry for the diversion, but it was very exciting.
The Cured. This is what is going on with Ellen Page and zombie movies. This is the second one we talked about in a month.
Wait, isn't this the same one?
Oh, is this the one that was at the Toronto Film Festival?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is it, and they just have a day. I just think it's funny that they're saying, like, part of why I threw this article in there is that there is this whole thing about how it's a fresh take on what happens after the infection, whatever, and it's like, actually, no, that's not true.
Yeah, we've seen this.
We've seen this many, many times. In the Flesh is what sort of immediately leapt to mind when I saw this lovely little thing. I think they're just trying to get people to read, but another little interesting take on her film. I am looking forward to seeing it, so we should keep an eye out for that. And then I think
it is the same. It's the same movie. I'm sorry, I'm just having a moment.
Yeah, no.
I forgot the name of that one. I don't even know if we talked about it.
We just kept calling it the Ellen Page film, so
Ellen
that
Page movie,
you can be forgiven for that. But anyway, that was kind of it. But I am looking forward to seeing that. Given all the hype, I'm a little concerned that it may not live up to it, but definitely worth checking out. So
Have you seen also that Anna and the Apocalypse has been getting a fair amount of positive reviews, which I'm happily surprised to see, because you think this is going to be like a throwaway, Cockney versus the dead or Cockney versus zombies type approach. But I've seen a couple different outlets singing its praises, so I think we'll have to get on that as soon as it's available to the public.
Yeah. So that rounds out our news for the week, I think. Do you want to hop into our review?
Yeah, sure. So here we go. Hopping. Let me bring up my notes. This episode, Brother's Keeper, directed by Ulrich Riley, written by Wes Brown. Saw a tiny bump in the audience the week before this. Episode 11 had gone down below 2 million to 1.99, and this went back up to 2.08. I honestly, we've talked about this. I think that this season should be building that audience back up to, I don't know, the mid sixes or something. Like, this has been a solid season of Fear the Walking Dead. I'm just worried that they've lost their audience and that people aren't going to come back to it. Even, I don't know, like it's a little sad because I feel like they've really done a lot to redeem themselves in season 3. Well, I mean, I don't know how you feel about this episode. I quite enjoyed it. It's obviously it's a big episode. It's got a giant mob of zombies in it and lots of action.
Oh, I did not enjoy this episode, but I enjoyed the melee and stuff like that, and the big set piece that they did at the end. That was great. But, we'll get into why I didn't like it in a moment. But what I was going to say is that maybe they will get a bump up given that it is Halloween season, and maybe people will come back to it. Everybody's settled into school now, so now there's some solid time to watch this and to catch up. So maybe they'll make up some of those numbers before the season finale.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that could happen.
But
So this.
So this is
Yeah.
the Troy issue that we have talked about ad nauseum, and
Well, they certainly don't solve that problem in this episode. That's for
well,
sure.
they don't. But the whole point. Okay, so once again, like, why would you leave this character living? He is crazy. He has nothing but hate. Truly, to like, he's just really a manipulative monster, and and everybody knows it, and everybody says it, and they say it multiple times, and even like his brother who grew up with him says it multiple times, and so they basically left him out there close to the ranch. They didn't even get him that far away from it, and he's out there just stirring up trouble, of course. And so he goes to the Black Hats. That's kind of where he's surviving his little. This whole weird little montage of him surviving out alone.
Sorry, what do you mean he's going to the Black Hats? Because he goes to Phil McMurray's ranch.
Oh, sorry. Well, I meant he went to their where they saw the wonderful torture of Mr. McMurray.
Yeah, that's that's like the outpost for the Clearly, right. He hasn't gone very far because that's just a half a day away.
Right, but I mean it's like kind of where they ran into the Black Hats before.
Right. Yeah.
And there's this little montage, and so here's the thing about Troy. It's like he doesn't actually need people, although I guess he wants them to kind of stir up stuff or whatever he's doing. And there's these weird little things where he's like cooking a snake, and then he's like super hungry, and it's like, yeah, but this guy knows how to survive. I don't know that he'd be starving. Because he can clearly kill snakes and other things, and food is scarce, but he definitely in terms of the people from the ranch who can survive, he is it. So I don't really buy this sort of woe is me thing going on with him. And then the other thing is that he manages to find some grenade launcher behind a weird sign that has a grammatical mistake. Which is God help those who help themselves, and isn't it God helps those? I don't know. I thought that was probably deliberate. And behind that little sign, he finds a grenade launcher. Really? I don't know. I feel like they would have used that against the Black Hats when they attacked the ranch, but okay. And then he gets this little glimmer in his eye, and he's basically, his big plan is to steer an enormous, massive herd of walkers towards the ranch, towards the compound. Yet he goes and warns Nick about it ahead of time.
Yeah, he's not a great this I've said in the past that he's a good villain, or he could be, and this doesn't really do a great job of showing us how he's a great villain. In a way, it's consistent because he's always seemed a little bit lost. Part of this obsession of his of writing stuff down, like he's doing research, always seems like he's looking for an answer to something, to a question that we don't really know why he's obsessed with this research or what he's looking for. And we have a lot of scenes of him writing furiously in this little notebook. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I felt like his character was probably contemplating suicide with his gun with the one bullet before he found the herd, and that gave him purpose again. But then his purpose is to start another apocalypse, wipe the slate clean of the ranch, and it's not entirely clear why he would feel that motivation. And then it's also not clear why he would be I'm gonna, however, try to save my brother and Nick, who their bond is completely absurd to me. Alicia and Nick talk it over a little bit in this episode, and she's like, I think you guys are the same. You've both got the same self-destructive streak, and I don't see that.
No.
Nick is, self-destructive in terms of being an addict, having an addictive personality, but he's never had this sociopathic approach that Troy has. So the parallels there I don't enjoy. But then, it only kind of gets worse for Nick and the Nick and Troy element during this episode, right, because of the way things go towards the end.
Right, and then there's also the weird stuff with Jake, which I mean we could have anticipated. This is big ass spoiler, sorry people, but we've been anticipating Jake's demise for a very long time, and he's kind of a weird character because he was supposed to be sort of the heir apparent. In terms of leading the ranch, nobody seems to really respect him. He's easily manipulated. and nobody listens to him. And again, like, this reminds me so much, like, and he generally has like the moral right of things, or the ethical right of things, and we know that that does not necessarily go well in the world of The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. I mean, Travis is the most recent example of that. But and we also have Dale from long ago, and anybody else that shows some kind of some kind of ethical.
T-Dog made some moral speeches right before he.
There you go. So I forgot about him, but that this is something that we've seen, and I guess it's just sort of like, okay, somebody says something that's like makes sense and is good, let's kill them off. And that's we have been anticipating this for quite some time. I'm actually surprised that it didn't happen before this. However, the thing that really troubled me so much about this episode, and so much about Jake, and the whole like Troy not dying thing, is that there were many opportunities Jake was going to actually end him, but Nick steps in for some reason. Like, again, and it's like, you got to live with this the rest of your life, which is like about 10 minutes more after this point, because he got in the way. And I just kind of feel like, okay, like Jake might have to make this decision to get rid of him, but as he has said, he's lived with this kind of stuff all his life. He's kind of seen the evil things that Troy has done. He described him torturing animals, torturing people, all this stuff. And maybe he would have to live with it, but at least he would be alive.
There's no real explanation for why Nick does what he does. He effectively kills Jake.
Yeah.
By whacking him so hard that he falls down a hill.
Yep.
And then gets bitten by a zombie.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty dumb. Okay, I will grant you that is not cool. Now, I mean, there is still a silver lining to this, which could be that Troy's character has some sort of arc that brings him back into the fold as a normal, useful person.
Yeah, but he's never been normal. He can't be
normal. No, I know. And like I said, it's too hard for him to be as part of the group, because he's this wild, like, loose cannon, and you can't trust him, and he's irredeemable and has been since episode 1 of this season. So, not great. But some other interesting stuff that goes on in this episode, Jake reveals to Alicia that there is a cabin fully stocked with survival stuff in the low desert near the border, he says.
Yep.
So I think what we have right there is setting up the Clark family leaving the ranch after the culmination, or whatever, however this,
right,
their current predicament washes out. They're almost certainly going to end up there for some period of time.
Yeah, but there's not a ton of stuff there. Only enough for 2, he said. So that'll be an interesting predicament. I
don't remember him saying that. I think he said that it was. Oh yeah, he did say enough for 2. That's for sure. Because he wants to go there with Alicia, and she's like, what are you smoking? I'm not going to just go with you
and leave my family. Yeah.
And they have some interesting interactions, because he also realizes, like, he kind of, he comes at her with the, hey, was this always the plan? Like, you're going to seduce me. Nick gets buddy with Troy, and Madison goes after Otto. Like, he seems like, and this is a question that we have asked as an audience. It's a little bit, it's not like breaking the fourth wall for him to ask it, but it's a little bit like, yeah, Alicia, how did you not see this? Why does she seem to be taken aback by this question of what was the Clark family plan here, and why, and if there wasn't a plan, why does it really seem like there was?
Right. And, I do think it's a little bit of at least he goes out and you don't think he's such an idiot, because, her face is kind of like, oh, yeah, no, that wasn't how it was. But it's so like, yeah, that was definitely how it was. And I definitely think at least they show some awareness, and that he isn't so naive to think that, it's completely, and she has said this before too, like, and I don't know, people do things to survive, and I think that they've shown that here, and this was an interesting conversation between the two of them. Sadly, it's their last conversation, but...
Yeah, relationships, though, in this universe, too, are kind of an odd territory. Like, they're almost always doomed.
Yeah.
We have now, in the Prime show, Michonne and Rick, and we'll have to see how that works. Like, we basically have a season, or half a season of it under our belts, and it's it's got its moments of levity, but it's like it's weird. I don't know.
Yeah,
Nobody
it is
else
kinda weird.
who like shacks up with someone else in the apocalypse seems to manage very well. And Alicia has basically had three love interests, four, no, three love interests since the show started. Her original boyfriend, whose tattoo she still has on her arm, I noticed recently.
Yeah.
The guy on the radio, Jack, I think his name was, who we thought might reappear but hasn't, because the show is weird that way and like just writes people out of the show instead of killing them, or like suddenly they're just gone. Like also that girl from the airplane, Alex was her name, I think.
Yeah.
The two people at the hotel, Hector and Elena, like they're just maybe they'll
Gone.
show up, maybe they won't, and if they do, are we going to remember who the hell they are because it's been so long?
I think they'll have
but
to
yeah.
do previously on The Walking
Right.
Dead. But no,
Has she had any other love interests other than her first boyfriend and then Jack and then Jake?
nope, I think that's kind of it. However,
But she doesn't really seem that into any of them. Like,
No,
I don't know
no.
if this is an acting thing on Alicia Debenham Carey's part, a writing thing. She always seems a little bit kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Well, and I think that that's what they were showing. She did definitely seem into the first boyfriend, and was even willing. Didn't before they understood what was happening, would probably have died if he hadn't told her to get away. So there's that. But I think maybe some of it is a survival instinct, and maybe a little bit of it is the sort of Beth thing where you don't necessarily get too close to people because they're going to die. So I don't know. Maybe it's some of it's survival, and it seems like it's deliberate to me.
Yeah, it is very close to the Beth. You're right. Beth also seems to go through this, especially with the season with when Bob is introduced and that whole scene. Her boyfriend dies in the first
Yep.
episode of that season,
Yep.
and she's like cool with it.
The one thing I'm wondering, and I hope they don't do this, is like there's definitely the option. Though they did specifically talk about birth control, so let's hope that's not what they're going with here. But they could make her pregnant with Jake's progeny, which would continue to tie her to the ranch. But I'm very much hoping, because they had that very upfront conversation between Madison and Alicia, that they won't go there.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, pregnancy storyline is fraught in this
Right, and
world too.
I'm just really hoping that that's not where they're gonna go. There's other options here now that the ranch is overrun, because it definitely happens. And let's talk about that melee scene. So finally, you have the groups finally prioritizing, because they have to, because they're gonna die otherwise. And you don't have people fighting against each other. You have them fighting the walkers, sacrificing themselves to save others. I was very sad to see Coop bite it.
Yep, Coop and Claw, both
Yep.
of our like named extras, very much supporting cast members. But yeah, it sucks. They both died, and Coop in a bigger way than Claw. Claw just got eaten like in the corner of the screen. Unfortunately.
I know.
So what's interesting about this whole plan is the Crazy Dog comes up with, and it's great that he comes up with this plan very quickly, is like park the RVs in a line so that, and it's similar to diverting the horde in the last season, in season 6 or 7 of The Walking Dead, 6 I guess, that we just reviewed, when they use an RV and other cars to and build some walls to get a herd to go around a corner, and so we see another version of this RV wall that we'd seen in The Walking Dead Prime, but it's not like it's what's not clear in this version of it is you can't see where it begins or ends.
Right.
Like you don't know exactly why the zombies can't just walk around either end of it, And then when they're like, okay, this RV plan has failed, everybody run to the pantry and just get out of sight. And actually, their whole plan with the RVs was like, we don't show ourselves to the zombies, and they will just walk on by. But then they don't try to be stealthy. And Alicia actually gets up and looks at the zombies and is like, oh my God, when she realizes that they've walked right through the gate and are coming to the camp.
Yeah, and this is what I don't understand. Okay, so let's talk about the fact that you have a ton of children and also a large group of people who don't know how to fight. Wouldn't it make more sense to have them already in the pantry?
I
right?
think I have to assume that some of them were already in there, but maybe not. Like when that final scene when she's looking at everybody in the pantry, there's children with blood on their faces in there. And you're like,
Right.
you guys were outside?
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, I get that you would have the people out there. I don't know, like wouldn't it make sense for everybody to hide in the pantry and just hope that
From
they
the
pass
beginning.
by?
Right,
and
from the
not,
beginning. Like,
and then
no
you could,
zombies see you. They're just going to keep walking, unless they just decide to stop because nobody's luring them
eating
anymore.
them. But when they just, the momentum would probably just keep them going. So I don't know. That seemed very strange to me, that whole plan. And, you have a bunch of vulnerable people that can't necessarily fight. And now you have this great fight scene, and I get that. But to me, it doesn't make sense from a survival standpoint. And like, Alicia knows better. And honestly, Crazy Dog knows better too. But hey, at least they're all working together now.
Right.
And obviously we're going to see something happen with Madison and that group coming back. And there are some interactions between Nick and Troy at this point, where Nick's basically like, Troy is showing some like, oh, I didn't realize things would work out this way. kind
He's
of.
also apparently hasn't slept in like a week. He's completely delusional.
Yeah.
So this isn't even Troy.
It
Like,
isn't even
we'll have
Troy.
to
We've
wait and
never-
see how he really deals with this.
We have never seen remorse from Troy ever.
No,
So
true.
this is why I just don't buy that any of these characters would be giving him the chance to do anything. We have multiple examples of him being a complete sociopath, and basically just an unapologetic sociopath, and nobody seems to be like, no matter how many times he like threatens them or puts people in danger or kills people, they don't seem to do anything about him. And I just don't understand that. And this is some of my complaint about the villain that they have made him, because they kind of sort of like try to like walk the line of him having some remorse, but he just doesn't in the way that they describe everything that he does. It's like, oh, that's just the way he is. And it's like, yeah, okay, so he really shouldn't be around people then. And nor should he be around anybody or weapons or anything.
The thing we have to be aware of now and kind of like cautiously not accepting of, but him and Nick are probably going to save the day.
Yeah, clearly.
And this could lead to Troy's reintroduction into the group. I don't. He's either going to die. He's going to have to die or be reintroduced into the group.
Right.
Like the governor, had a chance of redemption, but then ultimately was too much himself and couldn't be redeemed. And Troy, I think, needs to be taken out off the board. But there's a chance that they're gonna be like, well, he warned us. He warned you because he was bringing them there, and then none of this would have happened without him. He definitely is the culprit. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, but I'm worried that they're going to be like, Troy has done something ingenious to save, the people locked in the pantry.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's definitely got to be something between Madison and Troy have to meet up again because they've built that up too much. I don't know what they're going to do with him. Maybe it's like with his death at the end of the season, but maybe it's like, maybe they have to continue to have him there. I mean, he's the only sort of main, I don't want to say enemy, but he's kind of the only main like big bad other than, because they killed off the damn mafioso guy. So
Dante, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just disorganization from the crowds of people who want water, but there's no big bad except for Troy left. So unless they're introducing a new big bad, they kind of have to keep him in the show to keep things interesting, I guess.
They might do that because there's 4 more episodes in the season. So to get us into season 4, I think either they have Troy somehow become even more of a big bad, or they're going to have to introduce a new faction.
Right.
Especially now that the tribe and the ranchers I hope, are not going to regress again into, not to call it tribalism, but not to regress back into their 2 different factions.
Well, and then
they've
also,
faced this together.
Well, the other thing you have to remember is that with Jake's death, Troy is the only other progeny left of the Otto group. So maybe the ranchers will look to him as a leader, and they already kind of have more so than they did Jake. So maybe that's going to happen, and that will be the cleave. Who knows? But there's going to be some conflict there, I'm sure, with Jake's death. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, so that's, I thought that the action sequences despite the stupidity of the group fighting them like they did, but the Walker Horde, those fighting scenes I thought were excellent. I thought in general, like that sort of, and we knew something big would probably happen in this episode. So, that was, I think, a good, it was like great choreography. Can't complain about that.
Two other things that happened in this episode that I thought were interesting is, remember the well that they were digging two episodes ago?
Nowhere.
At first, I watched this episode at first, like with the volume way down, and I missed the exchange between Crazy Dog and Ophelia at first, where he's like, "We dug a well to nowhere."
Yep.
And so the first time I got through this episode, I was like, "Wait, what the hell happened to this well?" They literally did not show it again.
Yep. Well, that's why
they never revisit it, but it's just one tiny exchange between Crazy Dog and Ophelia where he's like, "We dug a well to nowhere. We're still all, you know." But clearly, like, the act of digging a well that doesn't work out is just enough to bring the groups together for this episode. It's a little bit odd, but I guess I'm glad for the outcome. And then the other thing that I thought was pretty interesting was the final sort of fight for Ophelia, Crazy Dog, and Alicia to fight their way into the pantry. They go through a pretty big crowd of zombies. Mm-hmm. And during this sequence, they are hitting... Actually, Alicia's fighting style against zombies includes a lot of body blows, which doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, for her to kill a zombie, it seems to take 3 swings. Yep. She doesn't have any of the efficiency of a Rick's group killer. Nope. Crazy Dog is using these 2 little daggers, and he's doing all these like big windmill like motions with his arms, but
he's wasting often a lot of energy.
He's also often hitting people in their torso and not just their heads. And he's going from top down, which if you're going for the skull, which he seems not to, that's like the hardest part. And so I don't know. I'm getting too nitty gritty, but like a couple of stabs up through the chin, and he'd be killing a zombie in one hit every time. And then you have also Ophelia with a mallet. I like her choice of weapon, but I see her hit a bunch of zombies in the head, and they just kind of like get knocked around a little bit. And I'm wondering if this is a conscious choice by the showrunners and the special effects guys to be like, these are fresher zombies than in season 8 and 7 of The Walking Dead, and so their heads don't just explode the way we're used to seeing it. Or maybe it's that Ophelia's like got little skinny girl arms and she can't swing a hammer as hard as Rick or I feel like even Carol can like kill a zombie with one hit to the head now with like a rifle butt. So it's kind of interesting. It almost felt like a Train to Busan style fight scene where they're not even killing zombies, they're just knocking them out of the way long enough to get through. Right. It was kind of interesting. Well, did you notice that while you were watching it?
I did notice it, and I also thought that maybe because it has taken Rick's group a while to get to that level, and remember, like, time passage we're not entirely sure of. I mean, we know that things have been happening a while.
It's years for Rick's group,
time Rick wakes up, even in the hospital.
That's 30 days.
It's 30 days, but we have seen their evolution as a fighting team. And I did think that this was more of a commentary on the fact that they're still learning. And this is, although it feels like they should have learned a little bit more quickly, just in terms of going to the skull. But maybe it's correct. The decomp rate is not quite there yet to be able to crush the skulls. But the mallet, I felt, should have worked. And I was bothered by the fact that it wasn't working. But anyway, so yeah, maybe we'll see. Maybe they are setting that up so that we see them improve as the time goes on. Yeah.
It was also telling that 2 people in this action sequence ran out of ammo. Like nobody got an extra magazine. Apparently, Coop just had a rifle and a pistol, and by the time his death scene comes around, he's out of bullets entirely. And Alicia runs out of ammunition in her AR-15 also. I don't know. This place is supposedly so well stocked. I'm just surprised that they all went out there with like one magazine each.
Well, again, they're out there and not in the pantry.
Yeah, they shouldn't have been out there.
And the pantry, I mean, honestly, and this does not make for a good melee scene. It does not make for a good set piece. It does not make for exciting fight scenes. But if they had all just stayed quietly in the pantry, they would never have even found them.
Yep.
They would have maybe they would still be roaming around, but a lot better than like a whole swarm of them coming upon them. Maybe you figure out a way to deal with them at that point. But that just seemed tactically like a ridiculous thing that they did. And I still I'm just so clearly bothered by it.
Yeah. It's what's weird is that it was like a mixture of defensive wall and stealth, but then they weren't stealthy. They were yelling to each other on the other side of the RVs. Like, they're coming. It's like, yeah, shush, you know.
And they can hear you. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and then at any point, Nick could have like shot off a weapon and changed their direction, and didn't do that either. So that also was puzzling to me. But of course, we do have to set it up so that they are going to save the day, I'm sure. But it's still kind of, you know, I did think that the power transference between Nick and Troy was interesting, mainly because, as you mentioned, Troy is totally delusional. But the whole thing where Troy's like, I'm really tired, and Nick's like, oh, you can sleep when you're dead. That was kind of silly. But you know, it's like there's definitely something between them that they're gonna explore further. And you know, a little bit of it could be the setup that Alicia alluded to, which is that she thinks that Nick and Troy have some similarities, and maybe that's why they have this connection. But do you feel, because I still don't feel like I understand their connection, I don't feel like the writers have done a good enough job of setting that up, that they have this weird connection. They've shown us a few weird things between them where they have some symbiosis or some kind of an understanding of each other that I feel like they're expecting you to take more of a leap of faith than you should have to. And they're not really explaining it all that well. So I'm really still bothered by it.
Yeah, we're just going to have to hold on and see if it makes sense by the end of the season. They've got 4 episodes or so
to do it.
One tonight and then a couple more. Yeah, we could 3 episodes left, I guess. It'll work out. Or let's hope. We've got another season of this. They've already greenlit another season. So for better or for worse, we're along for the ride.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up what I have to say. Did you have anything else?
No, we've definitely talked this one out. I feel good. I feel good about it. And then
good.
We'll watch another episode tonight. Today, we're recording this on the 1st of October. Welcome to October, the scariest month of the year. And then we'll be back again next time with episode 13 of Fear the Walking Dead. And so you should check us out then. And in the meantime, give us a holler on Twitter at ReanimatedPcast. You can email us your comments at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And you can see our website and show notes at reanimatedpodcast.com.
Yay! So until next time, ciao.
See ya. Bye-bye.